fear doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't knock on your door or announce itself. Fear slips into your life quietly, like a shadow you stop noticing, because it's always there. And before you realize what's happening, it starts making decisions for you. Not the big, obvious ones, but the small, daily ones that slowly shape who you become. Most people believe fear is something you feel when danger is near. But the truth is, fear is far more dangerous when nothing seems wrong, because then it feels normal. It feels safe. It feels like common sense. And that's exactly how it ruins lives without permission. Think about how many times you didn't speak up because you were afraid of sounding stupid. How many opportunities you ignored because you were afraid of failing. How many dreams you quietly buried because you were afraid of what people might say. Fear didn't scream at you. It whispered, and you listened. Fear convinces you to stay where you are by calling it comfort. It tells you this is good enough. It says, don't risk it. It says, what if it doesn't work? And slowly, day by day, you stop moving forward, not because you can't, but because you're scared of what might happen if you try. The most painful part is this. Fear doesn't just stop you from chasing what you want. It slowly changes how you see yourself. You start doubting your abilities. You question your worth. You assume others are more capable, more confident, more deserving. And without realizing it, you start shrinking your life to fit inside your fear. You tell yourself you'll start later. You'll try when you're more ready. You'll speak when the moment is perfect. But the moment never comes, because fear makes sure of that. Fear feeds on delay. It grows stronger every time you choose safety over growth. Look around. Most people aren't trapped by lack of talent or intelligence. They're trapped by fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of embarrassment. Fear of loss. Fear of being judged. Fear of being alone. Fear of being seen. Fear of failing. Fear of succeeding. Fear wears many masks, but its goal is always the same, to keep you exactly where you are. And fear is clever. It disguises itself as logic. It tells you, be realistic. It tells you, now is not the right time. It tells you, people like you don't succeed. It sounds reasonable. It sounds responsible. But what it's really doing is stealing your future one decision at a time. Think about how many times you felt a pull inside you, a desire to change, to grow, to do something meaningful, and then immediately felt fear rushing with excuses. That inner conflict isn't weakness. It's proof that there's more inside you. Fear shows up strongest right before growth. And instead of seeing it as a warning, you should see it as a sign. Fear wants you to believe that failure is the end. But failure is rarely what destroys people. Regret does. The regret of not trying. The regret of staying silent. The regret of living a life that feels unfinished. Fear convinces you that pain from failure is unbearable, but it never tells you about the pain of living with what if. Here's something most people never realize. Fear loses its power the moment you move toward it, not after you succeed, not after everything works out. The moment you act, even imperfectly, fear weakens, because fear survives on imagination. It creates worst-case scenarios that rarely happen. And the only way to expose those lies is through action. But fear doesn't want you to act. It wants you to wait, to prepare endlessly, to consume motivation without doing anything with it. It wants you busy but not progressing. distracted but not fulfilled, safe but not alive. And the longer you listen to fear, the smaller your world becomes. You stop taking chances. You stop trusting yourself. You stop believing that change is possible. And eventually, you forget who you could have been. This is how fear ruins lives. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly, patiently, over time. But here's the truth that sets people free. Fear is not a signal to stop. Fear is a signal to pay attention. It's an invitation. It's telling you that you're standing at the edge of growth, that you're about to step beyond the version of yourself you've outgrown. Fear exists because something matters, because there is something on the other side worth reaching for. If your dream didn't matter, fear wouldn't show up. If your potential wasn't real, fear wouldn't try so hard to keep you away from it. You don't need to eliminate fear to live freely. You need to stop obeying it. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is deciding that fear will no longer be the one in control. The moment you stop asking, what if it goes wrong, and start asking, what if this works? Something shifts inside you. The moment you choose action over avoidance, honesty over hiding, growth over comfort, fear begins to lose its grip. And this is only the beginning. Because once you understand how fear operates, once you see how quietly it has been shaping your choices, you gain something powerful, awareness. And awareness is the first step to freedom. In the next part, you'll discover how to break fear's control, how to move forward even when fear is present, and how to reclaim the life that fear has been quietly stealing from you all along. This story doesn't end with fear winning. It ends with you choosing yourself. Fear doesn't disappear the moment you understand it. Knowing how fear works is only the first step. The real change begins when you decide how you will respond to it. Because fear will still show up. It will still whisper doubts. It will still try to pull you back into old patterns. The difference is this. Now you see it for what it is. Freedom doesn't come from waiting until you feel ready. It comes from moving forward. It comes from moving forward while your hands are shaking. While your heart is racing. While your mind is filled with uncertainty. Most people are waiting for confidence. Not realizing that confidence is you don't become fearless first, and then you don't become fearless first. You live boldly, and fear slowly loses authority over you. And fear survives by convincing you that you must be perfect before you begin. That you must have all the answers before you take the first step. That you must have all the answers eliminate every risk before you try. That you must eliminate every risk before you try. Growth happens in motion, but life doesn't work that way. Clarity comes after action, in motion, not in waiting. Think about clarity comes after action, not before. They weren't born Think about confident. Every strong They weren't immune to fear. They simply reached a moment where they decided fear would no longer be the voice making decisions where they decided fear. They chose discomfort would no longer be the voice making decisions for them over stagnation. They chose discomfort every step forward. They chose uncertainty over stagnation. One of the most powerful things you can do is stop treating fear like an enemy. Fear became and start treating it like a signal. One of the most powerful things you can do is stop treating fear like an enemy and start treating it like a signal. Before breakthrough. Fear often appears before decision that could reshape your life. Before fear shows up instead of asking, how do I get rid of this feeling that could reshape your life? What is this fear trying to keep you from becoming? Instead of wants you to stay predictable. How do I get rid of this feeling? It wants you to repeat yesterday. Because
What does
yesterday
this
feels
fear
familiar.
try and keep me from becoming?
But familiar does not
Fear
mean
wants you
fulfilled.
to stay predictable.
Safe does not mean alive.
It wants you to repeat
There's a difference
yesterday,
between surviving
because
and
yesterday
truly
feels
living.
familiar,
And fear will
but
always
familiar
push you
does
toward
not
survival.
mean fulfilled. Never toward
Safe
purpose.
does not mean alive.
You don't have to make
There's a
massive
difference between
changes
surviving
overnight.
and truly
In
living.
fact,
And fear
fear
will always
thrives
push
on
you toward
overwhelming
survival.
you.
It
Never
wants you to
toward
believe that
purpose.
growth requires
You don't have to
one
make
giant
massive
leap.
changes
But
overnight.
real freedom is built
In
through
fact,
small, brave
fear
decisions
thrives
repeated
on
daily.
overwhelming you.
Speaking up one
It
time.
wants you to believe
Saying
that growth
no
requires
when you
one
usually
giant
say
leap.
yes.
But
Taking
real
one
freedom
step
is built
toward a
through
goal
small,
you've been avoiding.
brave
These
decisions
moments seem
repeated
small,
daily, but they weaken
Speaking up
fear
one
more than
time.
dramatic gestures
Saying no
ever could.
when you
Fear
usually
also
say
feeds
yes.
on isolation.
Taking
When
one
you keep
step
everything
toward a goal
inside,
you've been avoiding.
fear grows
These
louder.
moments seem small.
It twists your thoughts,
but they weaken fear
it
more than
convinces
dramatic
you that you're
gestures
alone in your
ever
struggles.
could.
Fear
That no one
also
else feels
feeds
this
on
way.
isolation.
That you're
When you
broken
keep
for being
everything
afraid.
inside,
But fear
loses
grows
strength
louder
when exposed to
It
truth.
twists your thoughts.
When you remind
it
yourself that
convinces
fear
you
is a
that you're
shared human
alone in your
experience,
struggles,
not a personal
that no one
failure.
else feels
And
this
here's
way.
something most people
That
never
you're
hear.
broken for being afraid.
Fear is not proof
But
that
fear
you're incapable.
loses strength when
It's
exposed
proof that
to
you
truth.
care. You
When
don't
you
fear
remind
things that
yourself
don't
that
matter.
fear is a
You
shared
fear the
human
things that have the
experience,
power
to
not a
change your
personal
life.
failure.
The
And
mistake
here's
is
something
letting
fear
most people
decide
never
for
hear.
you. Instead
Fear
of
is
learning how
not
to move
proof
with
that
it,
you're incapable.
you are allowed to be
It's
afraid
proof that you care
and still choose
You don't
growth.
fear things that don't
You are
matter.
allowed to doubt yourself.
You fear
and
the
still
things that
take
have the
action.
power
You
to
are allowed to
change your
feel
life.
uncertain.
The
And still
mistake
move forward.
is letting fear decide
Courage is
for
not
you.
confidence. Instead of learning
Courage
how to
is
move
commitment.
with it,
It's
you are
choosing
allowed
your
to be
future,
afraid,
even when
and
your
still
emotions
choose
beg you
growth.
to retreat.
You are
Fear will
allowed to
tell you
doubt
stories
yourself
about failure.
and still take action.
It will show you images
You are
of
allowed to
embarrassment,
feel
rejection,
uncertain
and
loss,
still move forward.
but it never
Courage
shows you
is
the
not
other side.
confidence.
It never
Courage is
shows you the
commitment.
pride you feel after
It's
trying.
choosing your future,
The strength you
even when
gain
your
from
emotions
surviving
beg you to
discomfort.
retreat.
The
Fear
self-respect
will
that
tell you
grows when you
stories
stop
about failure.
betraying your own
It
potential.
will show you images of
Fear
embarrassment,
only shows you the
rejection,
risk, never the
loss.
reward. And the
But it
longer you
never
challenge
shows
fear,
you the other side.
the more you realize
It never
something
shows
important.
you the pride you feel
Fear
after
lies.
trying.
Not
The
always
strength
in
you gain
obvious
from
ways, but in
surviving
subtle
discomfort.
ones. The
It
self-respect
exaggerates
that
danger.
grows when you
It
stop
minimizes
betraying
your
own
ability.
potential.
It convinces
Fear
you that the
only
worst
shows you the
outcome is
risk,
guaranteed,
never the reward.
when in reality,
And the longer you challenge
most of your
fear,
fears never
the
happen.
more you realize
And even
something
when things
important.
don't go as planned,
Fear lies.
you are far
Not
more capable
always
of
in
handling the
obvious
outcome
ways,
than
but in
fear
subtle
wants you to
ones.
believe. It
There will be
exaggerates
moments
danger.
when fear feels
It minimizes
overwhelming.
your ability.
Moments when
It
old
convinces
habits
you that the
pull at
worst
you.
outcome is
Moments when
guaranteed.
retreat feels tempting.
When in reality,
that doesn't mean
most
you're
of your
failing.
fears never
It
happen.
means you're growing.
And even when things
fear
don't
gets
go as
louder when
planned,
it feels threatened.
you're
And
far
the
more
moment you
capable
stop
of
letting it
handling
control
the
you,
outcome.
it fights
then
back.
fear wants you
That's
to believe.
normal.
There
That's
will be
part of the
moments
process.
when fear
The
feels
goal is not to
overwhelming.
live without fear.
Moments when
The goal is to
old
live
habits
without letting
pull
fear
at you.
decide.
Moments
who you
when
become.
retreat
To
feels
recognize
tempting.
it, acknowledge
That
it,
doesn't mean
and then
you're
move
failing.
forward anyway.
It means
Every
you're
time you
growing.
do that,
Fear gets
you reclaim
louder
a piece of yourself
when it
that
feels
fear had
threatened.
taken.
And the moment you
slowly,
stop letting it
almost
control
without
you,
noticing,
it fights back.
your life begins to
That's
expand.
normal.
You
That's
start
part of the
trusting
process.
yourself more.
The
You
goal
start
is not
taking
to live
chances
without fear.
You start
The
speaking
goal is
honestly.
to live without letting
You start
fear
choosing what
decide
feels
who you
meaningful
become.
instead
To
of
recognize
what
it,
feels safe.
acknowledge
And
it,
one day,
and then move forward.
you look back
anyway.
and realize that fear
Every
no
time you
longer
do
controls your choices.
you
the way it
reclaim a
once
piece
did.
of yourself that
That's
fear
when you
had
understand the
taken.
truth.
And slowly,
Fear was never the enemy.
almost without noticing,
Obedience to fear
your
was.
life begins to expand.
Freedom begins the moment you
start
decide
trusting
that your life
yourself more.
is worth more
You start
than your
taking
comfort.
chances.
That your
You start
potential
speaking
is worth
honestly.
more than your doubts.
You start choosing
that your
what feels
future is
meaningful
worth more than
instead
your
of what
fear.
feels safe.
Fear may walk
And one
beside
day,
you for a while.
You look
But
back
it no
and
longer
realize
gets
that
to
fear
lead.
no longer
And
controls
when that
your
happens,
choices the way it once
you don't
did.
just escape fear.
That's when you understand
You
the
finally
truth.
step into the life that was
Fear
waiting
was
for
never
you
the
all
enemy.
along. Obedience to fear was.
Freedom begins the moment you decide that your life is worth more than your comfort, that your potential is worth more than your doubts, that your future is worth more than your fear. Fear may walk beside you for a while, but it no longer gets the lead. And when that happens, you don't just escape fear. You finally step into the life that was waiting for you all along.